Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us once more. I cannot wait to introduce our guest to you. But before I do, I want to thank some folks that we always thank. We want to thank brassandwinds.com, a Quinn the Eskimo company. These are the folks we use when we're looking for brass or woodwind instruments for our teachers or our students. We think they're fantastic, and we think you'll think they're fantastic too. So give them a call or check them out at brassandwinds.com. We are Willow Music, formerly Grant Park Academy of the Arts. We're the next generation of music instruction, and we can offer you lessons on Zoom or live, not live currently, but when the pandemic ebbs, we will be able to be live. Currently, we're on Zoom, and we have violin instruction and piano instruction and woodwind and brass and drums and voice and anything you can think of. Check us out at willowschoolgeorgia.com. And also, if you're too shy to study with an actual person, you can go to Truer MU, which is where we keep our online lessons. If you'd like to study basic blues with me on video, you can check these lessons out and you can take them at your leisure. And we also have a community you can join where you can talk to other people. If you're a teacher, you can meet with other teachers. Or if you just want to hang out and see what's going on in a social media type community, we'd love to have you. All right, enough of that. You might choose to study with my next guest. Her name is Jen Litwin, and we have known each other for many years, although it's been many years since we've spoken. She is one of the remarkable sopranos that I was lucky enough to know when I attended Oberlin College 30 years ago. And Miss Litwin, hello.
Hello, Adam. It is wonderful to see you.
It's wonderful to see you too. Do you prefer Jennifer or Jen? I didn't ask you
Friends
that.
call me Jen.
Then I'm going to call you Jen. So let's give the folks a general introduction about who you are. You wear a lot of hats. You have, I've seen you most recently as a piano teacher, and you're very proud of your students, and you talk about them. But you've worked as a financial advisor at Greenwich and Associates and AIG. You're currently working at the Forum, and we're going to talk about all that. And you're also a fantastic soprano. And you've sung opera, and you've done all of those types of things. Tell us, let's now that we know all the amazing things that you do, or some of them maybe, let's go back to before I knew you, pre-Oberlin, and tell us how you got here.
How did I get here? Before Oberlin?
Before Oberlin, you didn't have it in your, you weren't born thinking I'm going to sing, were you? There was something.
You know, I was about 3, I think the legend goes, when I asked my parents for piano lessons. And so I was able to go to a wonderful teacher who was around the corner from me. And one thing that was great when I got a little bit older, I grew up before I was 9 years old, I lived in Norwich, Vermont. And my dad was at Dartmouth, and he was teaching there as well in the medical school. And so I had this wonderful life of independence as a kid, which I don't think is something that a lot of them can relate to these days, but I could even ride my own bike, my piano lessons, and I felt so independent and so cool. But I started very young with piano, and it became very clear that music was my thing. My dad was a very talented, extremely talented musician. He was a clarinetist and a saxophone player. And I think he wanted to be Benny Goodman when he grew up, but he was a doctor instead. And my mother has a beautiful singing voice, beautiful singing voice. My father had the razzmatazz and the innate jazz hands that I inherited from him, and then my mother's beautiful voice. So that came together. What happened was, when I was in 4th grade, we had then moved to Hopewell, New Jersey, outside of Princeton, and they had a great, it was a public school system, and they had a great educational program. And so I started playing the flute in 4th grade, and then that became the thing that I loved and wanted to make my life dream. And I still was playing the piano. I remember it was in 6th grade, I was at Hopewell Elementary School, and I was accompanying the choir because they needed somebody to do that. And I could do that and sing alto just because I had the ear. You know, we haven't gotten to the punchline that singing became my thing. But this woman who, she was associated with someone who worked at Westminster Choir College in Princeton. And I had the opportunity, she came up to me and said, "You have a great voice. Why don't you come sing for my friend?" her friend turned out to be George Gray, who was a renowned tenor. And he sang at the Met and all these places. And I had stars in my eyes, and I still didn't know what this was all about. Went to vocalize, and he took me up easily to a high C and beyond. And I don't know how old I was at the time, but like a tween.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that it was any big deal until he turned around to me and he said, "Those are the money notes." And I was like, "I'm listening."
Right.
Then that became something that was really my main thing. I juggled all three instruments all the way through high school. I was first chair flute in Greater Princeton Youth Orchestra, and I did all state band. Actually, I was the best piccolo player in 1988 in New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah. So I tried to find a way to do all three instruments, but it really became clear that opera and voice was my true love. And so then I auditioned for conservatories and got into Oberlin and was so excited. It was the perfect place. And I'm so glad that I met you there.
Oh, likewise. Yes. For those that don't know, we were in a show together. I was in the chorus and you had the lead. But I had so much fun being in the chorus of your show that I just kept singing. So thank you. Tell us about Oberlin, and did that change anything for you? Did it further your goals, or did it divert you at all?
I would say it absolutely solidified how much I loved singing. And then also meeting other singers who I could learn from was a tremendously eye-opening and exciting experience. And I am still to this day close friends with many of my Oberlin classmates. And it was a wonderful place to learn. One reason that I wanted to go there was because undergrads could have principal experience on the stage. That was something really important to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that I got that.
Did you go on to grad school in singing after that?
I did. I'm one of these people who is very goal-oriented. And when I was a freshman, I was chosen to sing in the master class given by Doris Yarrett-Cross, who still runs the opera program at Yale. And I still remember I sang "Hark the Ecking Air" from the Fairy Queen, and she was talking about posture and pulled me up from my hair like a puppet. And I made a note to myself that I wanted to study with her when I graduated Oberlin. So I auditioned a lot of places, but I got in there, and that's where I went. And that was another incredible experience.
Can you describe the difference between the experience at Yale and the experience at Oberlin?
Oberlin was more of the, full college experience with lots of different classes. And again, that's another reason I went there. I wanted the integration with students who were studying other things. And my roommate was a science major, and I loved that. So that was very different. When I went to Yale, it was like a professional school. We were all there for a very explicit reason, and we all wanted to be opera singers.
And so you graduate from Yale, and you're all set, you're goal-oriented, you have the experience, and you go on to a career in opera.
Oh yeah, because that's exactly how it works. You plan your life and it works out exactly the way you want.
Right. No, what happened?
What happened? Well, for a number of years, that did happen, and things were great. I had gone in between Oberlin and Yale. I went to the Epcaso program in Uderzo, Italy. That was a wonderful experience as well with Claudia Pinza. And then I got into the Sarasota Opera Apprentice program. And not only did I get into that, but I was the cover for Olympia in Lake Contofman, and I got to go on. Wow. I actually got that opportunity. It was the most exciting night of my life. It's not like I remember it, March 10th, 1995. It's not like I remember it vividly or anything, but I do remember thinking that this is the moment, this is happening. And I didn't have, because it was early in the season, we had only had a couple runs, maybe even just one or two, but I had just done the show at Yale. So I knew the role, and so the music part of it, the being like a doll, that part was fine, but it was this different staging directions and different partners on stage. And so of course that took some quick adjustment, because I was in the chorus, and I had watched it, but from a very different perspective. So with very few hours notice. I think there were 3 hours notice, and I had sung my chords out. Emmanuel Villaume was our guest conductor right then, and we had a master class with him that afternoon. And I remember that I sang like a coloratura aria that was just nuts, like crazy coloratura, and I gave it my all, not thinking I'm going to go on main stage tonight. But indeed, that is what happened. So I ran over and we had to adjust my chorus costume and kind of make it fancier and more befitting the lead role. And then I got the whole makeup treatment and, you know, in the special dressing room. It was so exciting, so thrilling. And, you know, you're thinking, this is it. I got a standing ovation, even from the pit, even from the orchestra, which was, it just almost brought tears to my eyes. And except the eyelashes that I had on, if I'd cried, they would have come off because they were like this big. Anyway, I thought, I'm going to go back to New York and everything is going to fall into place. And it didn't. I had trouble getting management. I did a lot of competitions and I would come in second or, you know, be a finalist. And I was getting gigs. I certainly did a lot of work along the way, and I did a lot of chamber music, which I absolutely adore. But I wasn't able to fully support myself doing that work. And so I used my other talent, which was typing. My mom had made me take a typing class when I was in high school, and I'm really glad that I did, because that meant that I could type like the wind without, and because I play the piano fairly well, I could look at stuff, especially numbers, and type them accurately and very quickly. So I was a temp secretary, and I got hired on the trading floor at AIG Financial Products in 1996.
Now, I want to pause this story here for a second.
Yeah.
This is really a great story, but I want to talk to, because I have people watching who are young singers and they want to think about a career, or just musicians. You've just told us a fairy tale story, right? I'm a kid, music is in my life, I'm doing it. Somebody tells me when I'm a teenager, I got the money notes, I want to go to Oberlin, I go to Oberlin, I study, I see this teacher at Yale, I want to do that. I want to roll in, you know, in this opera, and I get it. Everything, bang, bang, bang. How could you have that kind of a story and then go to New York and what happened? How is this possible? Explain it to our younger people.
Because that's how life works, unfortunately. You know, luck and skill and talent don't always coincide. And you just, sometimes you get served something that is not what you expected. And I think I don't really recall being taught at conservatory, you need to learn these other really important life skills and maybe some business skills, because this is a really hard business. I also don't remember anyone telling us how to manage our money and like how to tax treatment, how to save all your receipt. Like I didn't learn any of that. All of that I kind of figured out along the way, as we all did. But I think it would be smart when you're coming up in the world to make sure that you have some practical skills at hand. Because as you can see, even the most famous and wonderful, most talented, experienced singers right now, I'm thinking of very, very dear friends of mine, are out of work because of what's going on with COVID. And you need to have some other kind of tangible skill that you can apply to support yourself. So in my case, that was being a temp.
Yeah. And as it turned out, it was an interesting diversion for you. You've continued to sing your whole life. Let's keep it straight. You haven't ever left singing, but right. You know, it forked you into a kind of a dual path here. Let's say, what happened at AIG?
What happened at AIG was I was doing my thing, typing all my rate set notices and my delivery versus payment letters. But I guess I drew attention to myself by, I'm always very upbeat and positive and outgoing. Everyone at Oberlin remembers that, I'm sure. But I ask a lot of questions and I get bored really easily. So I like to know what it is I'm doing. So I was noticed because I was asking, like, what's a QSIP number? What does actual over actual mean? All these little financial things, and that I was typing all day long. And so people started to notice who I was. And I got a tap on the shoulder one day, and Joe Casano, who was the second in command at AIG FP at the time, and kind of an intimidating guy, he pulled me into this conference room. And let me set the stage for you. It was a beautiful trading floor, had about 150 people on it. gorgeous, gorgeous. We had risers made out of this babinga wood from, like, you're not supposed to take it out of the rainforest, but there it was with our computers housed in it. And we got food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because we were there working all day, like on the floor. You did not get up. You ran to the restroom, you came back, but you didn't leave during the day. And I thought, well, this is just for a temporary period of time, and that's fine. But then I get this tap on the shoulder, and he pulls me in, and around the perimeter of the trading floor are all these glass conference rooms. So of course everybody's like, what is she doing in there with him? And what I was doing was having my career opportunity handed to me. And I still get goosebumps. I've told this story many times, but I still get goosebumps when I think about it. So I've set the stage. There we are. Everyone's looking at me in this fishbowl. Joe is a scary guy. And he sits back and he's like, so what are you doing here, Jen? What are you doing? And I'm like, this is just a job. I'm here to earn money, which was great money. You know, I mean, I was earning a lot considering what I was doing. And I get on the train and I go into the city and I do my auditions. That's what I'm doing. He goes, well, have you ever considered working here? Well, no, not really. I mean, you're full time. And he said, let me tell you why I think that would be a great idea. Because musicians, especially opera singers, have a lot of translatable skills. I didn't know that these were yet buzzwords, and that, cognitive diversity was actually a thing. But he saw in me someone who was competitive, ambitious, driven, diligent, disciplined, comfortable standing in front of a crowd. I knew how to address a room. He could see me potentially running meetings, because I had command of my voice and I had stage presence, but also because I knew the value of hard work and repetition, things that we put in hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours to learn our craft and to perfect it. And he knew that I wouldn't balk probably. And he'd seen me working through my stack of rate set notices, every day and cranking those things out. So he knew that these skills would also apply to the trading floor. And I was like, well, everything you said is true and great. And thank you, Joe. But one thing that you're forgetting is that I don't wake up in the morning and want to come do this. So he's like, well, maybe this will change your mind. And he slid across the table a contract. And it was a considerable sum to me at the time. I mean, comically low when I look back on it, but it also stipulated that I would have a 401k plan and health insurance. And these are all things that I knew would bring my mother comfort, especially. But the other thing that it had was a stipulation that I would only have 10 vacation days for the year. And I almost didn't sign because I thought this is going to restrict me from pursuing opera in the way that I thought was the only way that I could pursue it, because it was going to be impossible to go and rehearse a gig, like that. So at best, what I could do was continue my concert work. I started doing recitals on my own, and I did a lot of competitions. So that's how I stayed in it. And then one thing led to another. So I became an associate full-time at AIG in what you would call back office, which meant that I was confirming trades. And each of us on the operations team, we were, for lack of a better phrase, rented out to the traders and marketers on the other side of the room. And each of us was dedicated to one of them to be their support. And one of the products that I supported was benefit responsive options, which is sort of a niche-y product. It's around stable value investing, which is also not a real sexy product, but it is a product. Yeah. And so I learned that very, very intimately. I really knew a lot about it. And these guys were really great teachers. And then something happened in my life where I realized I was probably going to have to continue to stay in corporate life to make the amount of money that I was making. And that's when I said, well, if that's going to be the case, then I want to be on that side of the room, because I think that I have people skills and I can do what these guys do with time and training and learning. But I saw potential, and they said they would give me this opportunity, and that ended up not working out at that firm. However, I got poached to go to UBS Investment Bank, which was just down the road from Westport, Connecticut, where I was. And UBS was in Stanford. And I got pulled onto that trading floor to be front office in the same product area that I had been
Nice.
in AIG. So that was a really big moment. That was a big step, because how else would I get on that trading floor? And I was one of the only women traders on the floor at the time. This was 2001. I
What
joined
was
there.
that like?
It was an awkward time to join because it was right after 9/11. It was
Yeah.
very emotional and very difficult. And the industry was really dealing with that and figuring out how we were going to proceed. But it was so exciting. It was so exciting. It was thrilling. It's like a trading floor is actually like a microcosm of an opera. At any given time, there's epic things going on. Lots of big bets being made, lots of commitments, lots of risk, lots of joy, lots of excitement, resentment, jealousy, love, hate, all of the things that.
Like that scene in La Boheme where you can see like 3 stories of things happening while they're having dinner
Yeah.
downstairs.
Yeah. And there's so many opportunities and areas to learn. So I really made the most of that, and I loved that experience. But then that was another, I think, almost 6 years, and then things started to change in the industry too. And it became clear that that was not going to be where I could remain for the entirety of my career. So I had to make another adjustment. And one thing you left out is that I'm also a master knitter. Heidi Moss, you may remember Heidi as well. She and I actually taught knitting at Oberlin.
Wow.
And so I had a knitting group. We called it Stitch and Bitch. And we would hang out, a bunch of us, and we got to know one another very, very well. I started it at AIG with some friends, and it continued when I was at UBS. And so one of my colleagues in the group who had worked at UBS had gone on to this firm called Greenwich Associates. At the time, it was a financial consulting firm, and now it's known more as a data and analytics firm. But she said, we just had a role open up that I think would be right for you. And so I applied and I got it. And that became where I stayed and really grew into the businesswoman that I am today, because that was a 13-and-a-half-year experience. And I was a relationship manager. And that really took into play like all of the things that I'm good at, the interrelationships, interactions with people, and solving problems, having to speak publicly. So I did a lot of that, delivering our results to our clients, solving problems that came about. And I found that I had an affinity for that. And so eventually I grew in that role such that for the last third of my career there, I was head of relationship management, a senior vice president, and I had a team of 10 people. And that was going great until I decided it had worn off. The shine had worn, and I found myself being a little bit complacent at times. And I thought, this isn't good. I should figure out what it is I want to do. And I had become more active at conferences, industry events like Fixed Income Leaders Summit, Trade Tech FX for foreign exchange, and Equities Leaders Summit, Trader Forum, all these places where I went and found that where I was really best was leading discussions, especially when they were around women in trading, diversity and inclusion issues, things that the financial services industry is not always the best at. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of women at the top. There's some very powerful and impressive ones, but it's not like when I was coming up, I had someone directly to emulate. And I was always the only woman in the room, even up to my last period of time there. I left there in May of this year. So it was a notable thing that this is lacking. It was something always in the back of my mind. It was something that I wanted to do more work in, but it wasn't my main remit. So I had to kind of do that as a side hustle. And at the same time that I was realizing I had this innate complacency, I received an email from someone in my network saying, you should check out this site. And it was a site for the startup where I work now called The Forum, which is dedicated to democratizing career advancement. And I was introduced to Allie Young, who is now my new North Star. She's a brilliant tech leader. She's just a brilliant, wonderful, wonderful, warm, engaging, outgoing person. And she and I had an instant connection. And she pulled me in and made a role for me at her firm.
And I want to talk about,
super excited about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that more. I want to talk about her and the forum, which is what you're talking about. Before I do, I want to recap a little bit, just for the benefit of the folks listening. I want to point out that you developed a lot of skills that were attractive and applicable to business, heavy duty business, through the arts. That's the
Yeah.
first thing I want to point out. Then, by not being afraid to go that route, you developed skills which served you in the arts. Not only networking skills, which apparently you've already had, but you seem to have perfected them. Um, Networking, but also, what can I offer? Public presentation. How can I connect with other people in a way that's not just beneficial to me, but meaningful? So I think that's what I'm hearing is that your journey into business, wasn't just a diversion and it wasn't just a moneymaker. It was part of your self-development as an artist.
It truly was, Adam. And as you were saying that, it gave me another idea of a thing to talk about, which was, so my singing career sort of petered out because I had to focus so intently on what I was doing to develop myself as a trader on the largest trading floor in the world, surrounded by men in this industry I knew very little about. It was a scary time. So I had to be 100% focused. But I found my way back to music in a different way than I had originally intended. And that's what really completed me as a person and continues to feed my soul and would make up for the hard times that I had at work sometimes, because, it was a hard learning curve for me.
Yeah.
But what I was able to do was, as I became more senior in corporate life, I became more attractive to people who wanted me on corporate boards. And I joined the board actually of the Music Conservatory of Westchester in White Plains, New York. I was a member for 4 years and had some wonderful experiences there, but I learned a lot about how nonprofits operate and how boards operate. So that was really exciting. And I also became more autonomous, and I was able to control my schedule more once I left trading and had joined Greenwich. And so I could expand my teaching. And where I had always had a few students, just a few, maybe up to 5, for the last, I would say, 15 years, I've had a full studio. Full for me is 10. So, because I'm only doing it on the nights, on the weekends and in the evenings. So
Uh-huh.
10 students seems a lot, but I was able to do that more and more, and also perform more because I would know how to ask for these opportunities. I wasn't as shy in asking for going out and getting what it was that I wanted. So I developed a relationship with a conductor of the Westchester Phil, and he gave me opportunities, and I am forever grateful for that, Paul Stickwinkle. And he really showed me how you can have these different careers concurrently. And so that's something that's been important to me. I should mention, I am someone who looks like, wow, I'm so successful at all these many things. One thing that's really important to note is I don't have my own children. So it's really hard to be a mom and to sing and I don't know how anybody would do that. I've been able to intertwine these 2 career paths, but I don't want anyone to think that I'm like incredible superwoman, because that has been something that hasn't been a part of my life. But the flip side of that is that my students, they're really important to me, and I get to know them very well, and I really love them all. And I've had so many go on to be successful, now grown-up people, some of whom are even coming to join me at the forum and to learn from me in a different way now, which is really interesting.
Well, thank you for that caveat. It is important to know that having children really does throw a monkey wrench into the works. And, but it doesn't diminish from the fact that you did something that a lot of people won't do, which is that you trusted your path. And when you saw other things happening that seemed to take you in the direction that was not where you wanted to go, you hung in there and you had big picture thoughts. And the rewards from that have been tremendous, including allowing you to have relationships with your students that you treasure. Might not have been possible had you not taken the chance and followed Joe down this path.
100%.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the forum. Before you talk about it, I want to read something from Allie Young's bio that I think is really powerful, and it probably inspired you too. It's a little long, so please forgive me. There are unwritten rules that men and corporations have been using for decades that women have not implemented due to lack of exposure and sponsorship, among other things. Allie spent a year researching career advancement and launched a new curriculum that unlocks upward mobility for women called the 5 Critical Skills. These skills are not gender specific, but they are often underutilized by women, and they are critical to navigating leadership within corporate culture. Allie's unique curriculum is based on her experience at Google and can reach a wide audience via her platform at the Forum. These skills apply to young women starting their careers all the way up to CEOs seeking board seats. Allie's personal mission is to move 1 million women into leadership by 2030. So that's really cool. That's what you're doing now.
That's what I'm doing. She's my partner. And it is incredible. We have an incredible team. The platform is a beautiful thing. I love what we teach. It relates to everything that I have done in my life, like everything. It's the time when I feel that everything I've been doing is worth it. Somebody asked me, what advice would I give my younger self? And it was really like, buckle up, because it's going to be a ride. And knowing that all of the troughs are equally as valuable as the highs, I think that's important to know. And we need to share that message that it's not going to be an arrow that's up and to the right. It looks like it on paper, but when you take my career and you really open it up, you'll see that the line looks like this, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in a knot. But it's just the most wonderful outlet for me to be able to use all of my skills and my experiences and the many, many stories that I have from covering clients and things that worked, things that didn't work, understanding how to navigate complex organizations. I mean, think of where I worked. I worked at AIG Financial Products, which if you read The Big Short, chapter 4, they left it out of the movie, but chapter 4, that was basically my life in my 20s. And that was the microcosm, like the center for what became the financial crisis. Like, I think my fingers probably put some of that toxic stuff in the system. But then to go on to UBS, which was this global behemoth bank. And at the time I worked there were over 100,000 employees. To Greenwich, which was sort of more of a smaller privately owned shop when I got there, but it has just been acquired and it is now part of the S&P global universe of shops. And it's been quite a journey. And now I'm at a startup with just a few people. But it's so exciting to use all of my skills in this one place.
Yeah, a thought just occurred to me. Now, I've been reading this book. I'm not very good at money things, but I'm trying to get better. And I'm reading a book called The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Are you familiar with this book?
I'm not.
Okay, it's a really extraordinary book. And Benjamin Graham, it's been around for 70, 80 years. It's been through 7 or 8 editions. And Benjamin Graham's big message is about the stock market. And his essential message is, just be in it for the long term. Expect the market to go up, go down. The more you try to fool with it, the more you try to second guess the market, the more you're going to just be out of your mind. If you want to work hard at getting good at the market, figure out where the value is and invest in value. Don't try to game the system. That's what he says. And he says, nobody listens to me, but this is really the only way. You essentially lived in that world. And I think to some extent, the people that did that and the people that didn't were all around you. Do you feel like you picked up that lesson?
I did pick up that lesson. And what's interesting to me is, like, when I look at a 401k plan and the lineup of the funds within, I see faces. I see the names and faces of the people who are executing on behalf of the participants in these plans. And I feel that their money is safe and in good hands. So I know the people at T. Rowe Price. I know the people at Fidelity, at Eaton Vance, at State Street Global Advisors, all of these shops, they were my clients. PIMCO, BlackRock, they're wonderful, really good, smart people. That doesn't mean that I'm an expert investor. It just means that I'm more familiar with some of these concepts and schools of thought. Mm-hmm. But I still put my money in a target date fund because I'm not going to day trade my own 401k. I just like to see that money grow. But I did make some changes based on fund profile, especially when I left Greenwich and now I'm in a different situation.
I apologize. I misled you. I wasn't asking specifically about what you learned as an investor from this, but what you talked about with life, with the highs and lows.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to trying to get, like, if you want to get operas, you can try to game the system with this director and with that director.
Oh, I see where you're going with that.
That's where I'm going. Yeah, that lesson. So in a sense, you absorbed a very powerful life lesson through these market ideas that a lot of people aren't aware of. And that's why I pointed out what Benjamin Graham was saying. And I wanted to hear your take on that life lesson.
Well, one thing that was really interesting was living through on the trading floor a couple real detrimental experiences. I mean, that's not even a great way of saying it, but the financial crisis, so 07, 08, serious times. And before that, going through 9/11 and all the repercussions, and seeing firms have to literally rebuild themselves. What was interesting is then looking at the younger people coming into the industry at the time who are not necessarily going to have the same perspective, because once things got back on track and we took off, they just think, oh, well, it's always great.
Right.
And that's really not the case. So I think there is something to be said for lived experience and perspective and the understanding that this is how life works in every industry that I can think of, in every way.
And here we are in another trough, as it were, sudden change. A lot of people are living through something now, and when it's over, there'll be a bunch of, kids. Of course, I think those kids aren't born yet, because anybody that's even a kid is going to remember this. But in 10 years, God willing, things will be great again. And that message will be applicable once more.
Yep, for sure. My heart goes out to all the kids these days, because going back to my example of riding my bike to my piano lessons, that was an important development for being independent and learning to make my own decisions and responsibility. And not just that, but I think the social element, that's why I spend the extra time with my students, like last night, making cat noises when we were saying goodbye to 7-year-old Maddie, and, indulging them when they want to talk about, I don't know, like bathroom things. But they do. They love to talk about farts. They do. And I let them, because I think it's fun, and I think it's important to engage also their creative side, but because I think that's something that they're missing so much right now.
Yeah.
Total tangent, but one thing I did do with those two girls I just mentioned was we wrote a story together over the summer when we were all stuck inside. Even when it was nice out, we were still limited in what we could really do. And we wrote a story called Toots the Cat About a Farting Cat. So there you go.
Well, since we've gone to piano lessons, let's talk about them. When I caught up with you again on Facebook for the first time, that's how I saw you. I'm like, wow. I thought of you as this, I thought you had like 75 students, because you really care about these kids. You publicize them. You're proud of them. You're an extremely professional presentation with your piano lessons. Why do you put so much effort into your piano teaching?
Because that's what's brought me everything that I have. It all started with piano. It really, truly did. I think that's a foundation for learning anything. Many of my students, they're not going to go on to become professional musicians. A few have the skill set to do that and the discipline to do that, but not all of them. But what it will give them is a sense of discipline, a sense of importance, understanding stage presence, how to come back when something doesn't go the way you want it to. All of these things that we talked about in the beginning, transferable skills, that it really starts there. And I have one student now, his name is Gavin Wainwright. He's very impressive. He's 17, he's about to graduate. And he wrote about learning piano and how that changed his mindset and actually led him to coding, and to see that there's music and art behind a string of code. The same way that he appreciates a beautifully written line of music. And he wrote about that in his personal statement for college. And it was so touching. And I should also mention, he came in and was our web intern for the forum this summer. So I try to, like, to your point, I really try to enhance their lives in every way that I can. I want to be a friend, a confidant, someone they can count on, someone they can come to. One of my other students graduated last year, and she's at Wake Forest right now, and she was auditioning for a cappella groups and texting me, and then texting me about boys, and we have a lot of fun talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love being in their lives, because I think that learning piano from a young age just instills such great basic knowledge and discipline.
Do you think you teach your boys differently than you teach your girls?
No, we all talk about farts.
Oh, good. Because we
No,
all fart. So
I don't think we do. I don't think that I teach them any differently. I teach each student differently.
You understand why I asked, of course, because you're involved in an organization that's specifically geared towards helping women, and that's something that you were drawn to and you care about. So in this case, though, you don't feel that there's anything necessary to say to the girls specially.
No, it's not a gender thing. For me, it's the individual. I have one student who's extremely shy, like painfully shy. She's a delight. She is just, and she's brilliant, and can have a wonderful conversation with her, but she'll get very silent when she's around other people. So one thing we would practice, and I did this with her older brother too, when I would have recitals, when we could do that, I would walk around the room with her and introduce her to various grown-ups and have her have a little conversation with them to practice networking, like I would do in any room at a meeting or at a conference when I'm meeting new clients or prospects. So I think that I teach each student, I approach as an individual, and some, they like to be all business and don't want to have the back and forth and silly. Others need a break for silly. They can only focus for so many minutes, and I can sense it. I have a good spidey sense for that. Yeah. We back it up, tell a little joke, and then we go back, or I'll pull out a puppet or something. I have a frog puppet I use, all sorts of props, especially over Zoom. That's helpful. I find that they get, it's a lot of intense learning over Zoom that they have to do. It's a long time to be staring at a screen. So I'm very attuned to the individual student, but I would not say that I approach it, from the standpoint of boys versus girls in any way.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you've got your life set pretty good right now. You got the forum, you got the piano, you have a wonderful, right? Okay. But we know what we know about Miss Jen's life. So what's the future hold for you? What do you want? And what are you afraid of?
Oh, I'm always afraid of not succeeding. I'm, like I said, I'm someone who likes to win, who likes to be the best. I'm very competitive, and I enjoy that. But I think I have a different perspective these days, and I'm really enjoying learning again. Not only am I learning what it's like to work at a startup and with a small team, and a small team of women, I should add, which is very different for me, but I'm learning new technology along, like all the different platforms that we are using in our work. That's new. So I feel clever and smart and excited about doing that. And I think it's probably good for my brain in some way to continue to learn. But I'm also really excited that it's a chance to pull all of these things together. So one thing that we didn't talk about yet was a presentation that I give. It's called Know Your Voice. And it's about what I have learned as a performer, a lifetime on the stage, and also a lifetime on the corporate stage, if you will, in meetings, even if it's a one-on-one. If we're talking to the global head of trading at a giant firm, that's a performance. If you're in a board meeting and you are speaking, that's a performance. And so I take the skill sets that I've learned and I teach people in corporate life how to appear to be confident when they're speaking. And so that's something that I'm looking to do more and more of, and to really help people, especially with their presentation on Zoom, and making sure that they have like a good setup and good lighting and the camera angle at the right thing, and, you know, pull your hair out of your face, put on a little lipstick. But I think mostly it's about their vocal presence and understanding how to support themselves breathing, and how to alter their pitch, how to enunciate properly, take the time that's needed, and make sure that there's lots of room for impact. So that's what I'm really excited about doing. And of course, the mission is what drives me. So making it so that others coming up behind me don't have the same experience that I had. Yeah, I eventually figured it out. I did, but I am almost 51 years old, and I would have loved figuring that out a long time ago.
And figuring out what exactly?
How to navigate an institution, how to be visible, how to self-advocate, how to identify what my personal brand is and what skills and special talents I bring to the table, and then how to amplify that such that people hear it, how to build an authentic network, how to strategize to turn those influencers who might be skip levels above your manager, or in departments that aren't even yours, or even at different firms somewhere in the industry, how to turn those people into advocates. So I did that, but I had to figure it out piecemeal over time. And now I'm in a position to teach people how to do that. And that's very fulfilling.
Well, if people want to learn this from you, how can they do that? How can we find you?
You can find us on the forum, FOREM.co. The forum, I should also mention, is not that we're bad spellers. It is named after my founder's daughter, Emerson. It's 4M. And
Oh, that's
she's 10 years old.
great.
Lovely. Yes. She's fabulous and might soon be a piano student of mine. We're still working out the details. But we hope that she won't need it one day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's terrific. Jen, I really have enjoyed this conversation. You've got so much cool stuff to share. I'm really excited. Thank you also for reaching out to me and asking to be on this show. That's really special to me that you cared enough to want to share this. Thank you so much.
Well, I've been watching what you've been doing, Adam, and it's such a delight. And I also want to thank you for being willing to zoom into my lesson with my student Nate last Sunday night, who's working on some really challenging repertoire. And sometimes I feel like my technique, you know, like maxed out at a certain point, and I want to still be his teacher, but I still want to give him the opportunities to learn from others. And you gave some brilliant advice, and Isaac Ayala gave some brilliant advice, and we're going to line up some more too. But it was really special. It was a special moment to see you on the Zoom there, and working with Nate and eliciting such amazing responses from him. Like instantly, I was really impressed by how you connected so easily with him. And the things that you said really stood out. And I'd like to say one of those for your audience, which was, when the music when this becomes boring for you. So we were referring to a passage in a Chopin nocturne that he loves the fancy stuff. He has these giant hands. He can kill those octaves, no problem. But when it became something a little more nuanced, a little more quiet, introspective part of the music, he grew bored. So all these big chords, and you were able to elicit this lyrical sense, and you talked to him about breathing, which I loved, because I'm constantly trying to tie that back to tying back piano to singing, and how phrase marks think of them as breaths, and that really changes everything. And you were able to get him to do that in such a way that it brought tears to my eyes.
Well, thank you. It's very kind of you to bring that up. For me, it was a pleasure. Your student reflected so well upon you, because he was willing to take a lot of, serious criticism fast, and he just caught it and he went with it. He didn't challenge me or, freak out or say, well, I already know that, or I know how to do it. He's 15. And
he's 15. He easily could have gone that way. And I was like, please tell me. But he rose to the moment, as I knew he would.
And it speaks to what you've taught your students and how you prepare them for these moments. So I applaud you for having him ready for that.
Thank you. Well, he's been with me since he was a very little boy. So it's a really satisfying thing to see him grow in the way that he has, and to be still a part of his life.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I look forward to working with you again in the future then.
I hope so.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Adam.
And thank you, everyone, for coming and joining us today. I just love sharing these guests with you. It's really fun for me. It's maybe the best thing I've done in my life. And I have some more interviews coming my way. We're going to be interviewing Chris Budd, who is a crisis manager. And we're going to be talking about how to survive crises. And since he deals with crises in companies, I was like, well, what about musicians? How do they handle their crises? Maybe he has something to offer. We're going to be talking to Larissa Gosla, fantastic songwriter. And we're going to be talking to one of Billy Joel's early drummers who played on one of his early albums. I cannot wait for that interview. So be sure you check us out, like our interviews, and we'll see you next time.